other open market.
Totally. Yeah,
You know,
totally.
there's going to be people come in and compete for the top spot and battle for as much of the market share as they can. And
Yeah. And they're all different capitalized, different strategies.
Oh, that's it.
Value Buds is different than this dude down there.
Yeah.
It's the world we live in. You guys good? Yeah. All right,
I
let's
guess
do it.
I guess we started without you.
Yeah. Are we rolling? Hello and welcome to the Everything Cannabis podcast presented by Kindling. I'm your host, Michael Davis, and I founded Kindling so you can order legal cannabis on demand for free. I'm very excited to introduce you to our next guest, Josh Rutledge. He's the visionary behind The Drip, an exciting new cannabis brand that's making waves in Ontario. Josh's deep-rooted passion for cannabis cultivation began in his youth, and he's achieved numerous awards and recognition throughout his journey. With a profound connection to the plant, he's arrived at this high point in his career. We're thrilled to have him on the show to delve into his industry journey and get a closer look at The Drip. Josh, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man.
For sure.
I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. I think we should probably start with a little bit of background on you, how you got started in the industry, and maybe a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, started, kind of smoking and stuff like that, as a, 12, 13, 14, kind of that young part of my life, right? And then kind of found cultivation. I was probably 15 maybe or 16 or something like that. And yeah, we kind of just slowly started to figure it out. But obviously at being 15 or 16, you're doing something that's at the time decently illegal, So it's there's this I don't know, this kind of excitement around, so trying something new that at the time, obviously you're not supposed to. And if you're a heavy consumer, then it's hey man, I can grow this weed instead of buy it all the time. That'd be cool, and it quickly escalated to, okay, looking into genetics and, obviously you got to think that's pre-2000, late 90s. So there is some people that had some stuff that were oh, this is this strain, this is that strain. But for the most part, it was kind of just whatever the plug had is what you got.
Totally.
And so that was the first kind of part of my life where I was hey, there's other options out here, So we started kind of there's a group of us that were, looking into all the stuff coming over from Holland. And there's actually super dope spot down on Lakeshore. It's called the Hidden Jungle. And it was this dope head shop, but they just had catalog of all the seed stock from all the big vendors over in Holland and different places, right? So but that was the days where it was if you wanted to order seeds, you had to fill out a form and check off the boxes of the things you wanted,
right? And
put a money in there, a money order, whatever, and mail it to the company.
Wow.
Right? You know what I mean? It was pre
totally.
being able to just jump on an e-commerce site and order something, right? So that was kind of where I would say the cultivation thing really kind of kicked off. Once I started kind of diving in a little bit at that point, it was hard to turn back from there.
Totally.
I remember being 15 or 16, and we didn't have much going on, just a small little closet, but I spent hours just sitting and looking at plants that were not even flower. You know what I mean? And
just a dirt.
Yeah, literally. And I was just I was so consumed, and I realized pretty quickly that I enjoyed growing more than I enjoyed consuming. And I mean, I consumed a lot of smoke at that time, I smoke a lot less now than I did at that point in my life. But I realized pretty quickly that cultivation drew me in even more than consumption did, So that was kind of where it kicked off. And then a couple of years after that, we got ourselves in shit, and I had to stop growing for a while.
So what was it that, so you mentioned you're 15, 16, so you're consuming a bit and are looking at getting into cultivation. So what does that look like? What's this sort of spark that you're oh fuck, this is what I'm into. This is the thing.
I don't know. I've always been one of those people that's just they're curious, they want to learn, they want to so at that point in time, the main literature you get your hands on was High Times magazines, right? So it was just you waited for the new month article to come out, and then you go and you scoop it and you read through, and then you see these guys doing crazy grows and growing these crazy buds that you never seen before, you know? So that really sparked the like, hey, like I really like this, you know? Like
Yeah.
there's so many like possibilities. The possibilities are endless.
Right.
You know, when it comes to, you know, cultivation and genetics and all these kind of things, right? So it was, at that time it was super exciting. I mean, to me it's still super exciting, right?
Yeah.
But you know, I feel like your early years, like your early like teen years, you know, like between the age of 10 and say like 17 or 18, I feel like you're like super like moldable, and a lot of the things that you fall into in those points in your life like stick with you for your whole life. You know what I mean? Like you just have this like romantic experience that like draws you in, you know? Like still to this day, there's this lake that we started growing on in the Muskokas, and like still to this day when we roll up there with the boat, I still get the same butterflies I did when we were like 8 years old or 7 years old going to the cottage, you know?
Nice.
It's like, so that's it. It kind of fell into that same point in my life where it was like, you know, this was like a magical time of my life, and this was the thing that I was most excited about, you know.
The
so
seeds of a passion are sort of.
that's it, right? You know, it's like not
hit
many
head.
people do things like and chase dreams down, you know, that they didn't start when they were kids. Not many people like get this dream at like mid-30s and go, I'm going to chase this down, you know.
Yeah.
Most people, it's like they had some like connection with it at a young age, and it like became this like kind of built-in, you know, like passion that like no matter what the ups and downs look like it's still there, you know?
And so what turned you on about the process of it? Was it sort of like seeing like a end product and working it backwards in terms of like what's the sort of genetics, what's the grow?
I think for me, like early on, it was just like, because anybody that's spent some time growing understands, like especially in those days, like there's no information, so it was a long hard road to learn, right? So for me it was just like the excitement of like, you know, like the challenge of figuring it out, right? You know, like go to Chapters or wherever and like ask them to order you in like the Jorge Horrendous Grow Bible or something, you know what I mean? But like that's what you had to do, right?
Yeah.
So no one else was doing it, right? There was like me and a couple other like buddies that were like,
Listen, Janet, I need this.
yeah,
Order it for me.
right? You know, they're like, oh, okay. They're looking at you sideways.
Yeah, totally.
Man, it's just like, you know, a lot of people don't like understand what it was like,
Right.
You know, in the like late 90s, early 2000s to grow weed. It was fucking people like were pretty quiet about it. No one want to talk about it. You know?
Right.
So,
And I feel like that's the best way to do it. Anything is just to start doing it, and then you make those mistakes versus like now you can go, okay, and like research for 9 years about the best cultivation methods, and then before you know it, you've done nothing, and like, you know what I mean, versus like this approach where you're just diving headlong into it.
Yeah, I mean, like
bit.
the early years of it were definitely just trial and error. You know what I mean? Like learn what you could here and there. But I mean, now like cultivation now is a whole different. You know, like the guys that are doing it well and know what they're doing, like it's essentially large ag at this point. Everything's data-based, everything's science-based. Like there's no like, oh, walk in and
There's
like,
no touch feel.
I mean, it still is, right? There still is that piece, right? But like to scale and keep consistency,
right,
the data points are very important, right? So if you don't have constant eyes on what's going on the data piece, it's hard to go in and look at every single plan and go, I see this. It's okay in a small facility. It's hard at scale, right?
Gotcha.
So those data points are essentially your eyes.
Right.
So, you know, some people still grow off of like feel. They hand water and they go in and they like, look, oh, this plant needs this plant needs that.
But those guys probably aren't looking to make a profit on it. They're probably looking for...
There is guys that are in the market right now that's how they grow, right? And I mean, like, all the power to them. If that's something I feel is too high risk for me. Do you know what I mean? At scale, like to me, like that whole like touch and feel model, like it's scary to me.
Yeah.
Why
though?
Just because, so like for example, we use a drip irrigation system on everything we do. If your drip line goes down or you have a couple drippers clogged or something like that, or let's say like an irrigation section goes down, depending on what substrate you grow in, you're not going to see that visually until it's already caused damage to the crop.
Gotcha.
Like you can recover from it, some things, right? But like, so let's say for example, if you grow in rock wool is like a substrate that's, it has a certain like initial water volume holding when you first saturate it, but it has hydrophobic properties that if it dries down below a certain percentage, you can never re-wet it up to the top.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So if you make a mistake and you miss that and you don't see it with your eyes, now you're chasing the rest of the run to try to like work in a substrate that's essentially half the size that you thought you were starting with.
Gotcha.
Right? So when we plan cultivation, it's like plant size compared to substrate size have to match. If not, I can't control my drybacks from my last irrigation to my start of my next one the next day, right? And then now I'm in a situation where I have to water when I don't want to, just so I can keep the plant healthy,
Gotcha.
right?
Yep.
There's a lot of things like that where it's like the data points. I would have seen that the second it didn't water, I would have got a notification saying, hey, you're below X water content that you should be at. Here's your range for today.
Gotcha.
You're below it. Go figure out what's going on. You know what I mean? You got
Yep.
some issues right now, right? So
That's interesting. We've talked to a few growers, and I'm obviously a novice in the space, but it seems to be there's a certain archetype. Like, you guys have an engineering mindset, but also this sort of like artistic touch and feel, and it's sort of undergirded with this passion for the plant. And I don't know what that is, or like if there's a certain like school or college you guys go to, but like the way you're talking about this shit, and like while you're smoking a joint, it's crazy.
you know what? Full transparency, bro. High school dropout, man.
That's what I mean. Like,
High school dropout. Like I don't think I read an entire book until I was like into my late teens, and the book I read was about growing weed. Literally, I never completed a book. Like through high school, nothing. Never read an entire book. And then from the age of like 18 to 25, I probably consumed, I don't know, I try to read like 4 books a month or something like that. Try and read a book a week, whether it's through like an audio
right.
or actually hard copy. But like, yeah, the education piece like afterwards is the only way, like, to especially again in cultivation.
Yeah,
like there's so much knowledge out there now that if you're not putting the time in and like putting the effort in to learn, like even if you're the best right now, if you're not putting in the time to learn, to see what everybody else is doing and like see where you can go next, it's only a matter of time before you're left behind.
And
right?
So speaking to that, is there sort of like over time a philosophy or strategy you bring to cultivation where you could kind of look at another grower and go, well, you know, that's your thing, but I go left here at this intersection, whereas you go right? Like you mentioned the drip approach or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. Like we, like I say, we're a data-based cultivation tech. That's what we do. All our decisions are made on. Majority of the decisions are based on the data. There's a lot of cultivators that grow different ways. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Like there's a zillion ways to grow, and a lot of them are really good. You know, like the way that we choose is just the way that we feel the most comfortable and feel that we can, you know, achieve the most consistent end product. Right. And that's the thing for us, right? That's why we like to use like a hydroponic substrate. I have full control of what's going on in that root zone at all times, so which gives me the ability to create consistency, and that's where the data piece comes in too, right? It's like I can take a data set from a full cultivation run, you know, and if it was really successful, we can look back through the data and say like what were the key points, metrics along the way that like got us to this end result. You know, okay, the flower turned it a little bit more calyxy, a little bit more generative looking this run. Why was that? Okay, well, let's look back through the data. Okay, here we steered this a little more this way or that way. Yeah. Right? And it helps us, like, once I can narrow that in, then I can take that and I can scale it across different facilities, right? As long as they have the ability to hit the parameters that we want to hit. So as long as their HVAC is strong and they've got the right irrigation, right, we can create really repeatable results. Gotcha. That's where I find like this space right now is like in shambles. Like 1 week you'll get a batch of something that's really good, and then like a month later that batch was like mediocre at best. You know, and that's just a consistency issue where either it's coming from a different grow or because they don't have the data piece, you know, they're
not able to replicate that success they saw
really hard.
before.
Yeah, it's really hard without it, you know. So that's why we grow from that standpoint. Just because we feel like the best growers in the world are large ag, right? They spent all their time, money, research, everything they can do, because you got to look at the margins in large ag for vegetables and stuff like that. It's so narrow, right? You need to get every little bit you can, right? You know, to do well. Where we're working with a cash crop that's very valuable, so you can get by being 50% efficient. Gotcha. Do you know what I mean? Where those guys, they can't. So it's like, who am I going to study? I'm going to study the guys that have to execute to the 100th percentile to be profitable. Why am I not going to look what they do and figure out how they do things, and that's what we've done, and then basically manipulate it for the cannabis plant specifically, right?
And is that how much, you know, sort of percentage would you attribute to like data and hardcore sort of like engineering and systems, and how much would you attribute to like your vision and sort of the art side of it?
Probably 50-50.
Really?
Yeah, because all the data and all the stuff gives me the ability to execute. At the end of the day, it's my job to make a decision on what to do with the data.
Totally.
Right. You know what I mean? So like I've still got to make the decision on how to manipulate the plan or manipulate the run, you know, to get a certain result that I'm looking for.
Right.
But without the data there, I'm just guessing. I'm in the dark. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Not to get too nerdy on this, but it interests me. Like, is there an endpoint to like where you've developed a crop? Like, do you have KPIs or like, you know, numbers that you're trying to hit with this particular crop, and then you're like, okay, we got it, check, harvest kind of thing? Or is it sort of like it's touch and feel? You see the numbers come back, you're like, you know what, let's add this, subtract that, and you know what I mean?
So like the part of it that's not data driven for us is the end product.
Yeah.
Like I don't make our decisions based on what we think is going to give us the highest THC. I give it, you know, based on what we think is going to give us the best quality product at the end.
Yep.
So that is the one piece of the process for us that like spin it up, smoke it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep. And that's where the sort of human element,
make
50%.
a decision like, was this the batch? Was this the run? You know what I mean? Like, is this the one that we want to dial in and continue down this path, or
right on?
You know, so that's the part that's definitely more, you know, away from the data piece, right? But
totally. I want to get into the drip. I want to get into like your vision for it, but I guess we should talk about sort of the story. I know you've started a ton of different entities. You've got Lush Cannabis, that's a retailer. Yeah. Tell me about the sort of business side of this thing.
So, I mean, like, to go back to kind of where we were left off, I was growing, I got popped, stopped growing for a while. And I started another business. So I ran another business in the sports training industry for probably 15 years.
Really?
Before I came back to the cannabis space. Huh. Yeah, so we spent some time away from it, and then kind of circled back, and it was always like my passion, so I always wanted to go back to it. And then basically when they introduced the ACMPR medical program, where it was kind of like, hey, anybody can get a license, I'm like, okay, well, that's a no-brainer for me. You know what I mean? I was consuming, you know, for more medical purposes at that time in my life. I guess I still do, but that was kind of like what steered me back towards cultivation and getting back into it. And that was like when I really started to dive in and study and like
seriously
really educate myself, right? And yeah, the goal was we want to take Lush to the cultivation side, and that was like early legalization. So most people that were in the space and cultivation at that time were like, you know, Liberal Party X, you know what I mean? We're talking people that like have all the strings to pull.
Yep.
And we're just like some black market guys that are like, hey, how do we grow weed in the legal market, right?
Gotcha.
So needless to say, we were not ready for that at the time. I'm happy it didn't happen because we weren't ready at the time. You know what I mean? Like I know now. And I thought I was game, right? I realized now it would have been a massive failure anyways. But
yeah.
So then we transitioned the Lush brand from a flower brand to retail. And all this at the same time, I was obviously still cultivating during that time. Mm-hmm. And the market for the indigenous side of things was really strong for a while. So we kind of just stayed over there and just kind of hid in the shadows, no branding, no nothing, like just grow good flower. We had like a good relationship with, you know, someone that kind of had a lot of connections in the space, who's actually my partner on our retails now. So that relationship kind of like carried us through for a while. And then that market kind of took a bit of a nosedive pretty heavily, right?
Why was that?
A
lot of factors.
Yeah. I mean, legalization.
Right.
You had probably the peak amount of like medical licenses, like ACMPR medical licenses out there. There's a lot of people that were doing really big scale, like greenhouse, like stuff. So that like market got really saturated. Really, everybody realized, hey, there's like a wholesale market that's really accessible. Let's try and meet that demand, right? You know, and then it came crumbling down pretty quick. And I was like, okay, like we need to do something on a brand standpoint. That's the only way that, like, we were known at the time for having the best flower, right? But without a brand behind it that the end consumer could like reach for, that really there's no that much value in our product, right?
It's just
if the market is fluctuating, like if you don't have a brand presence where you have a loyalty to your brand, then you're just like at the mercy of the market.
Right. Totally.
You're not gonna like be able to like say this is our price point and this is where we are. I don't care what the market says. This is who we are and this is our price point, right? If you have a brand that's in demand, you can do that.
Right.
Right. If you don't, you're kind of like, well, that's what packs are going for. This is what we're selling for,
Yeah.
like, right. So that was the kind of like thing that pushed me towards building a brand instead of like being kind of hidden in the shadows. I was like, I realized pretty quick, I'm like, this isn't going to work if we don't, build some demand for our flower specifically.
And build some equity in an entity versus sort of like,
That's right.
this fleeting. And so like in terms of building demand before branding, it's really just all about product. There's absolutely nothing to do with, digital marketing or, brand identity or anything. It's literally just balls to the wall, fucking make a great product, let it do its work. That's
Either
it.
the product speaks or it doesn't. That's
Right.
it. That was the, what I mean? So that like helped us too, because it was like our first focus was that, not brand building, not, public appearances, not, you know what I mean?
Podcasts.
Like, well, yeah, but like all of it. Like I never did any of this stuff.
Right.
Like my other business that I ran before, like I said, was sports training. It was like pre-social media. Like, I mean, just social media, but like it started, before Twitter, like Instagram was really Instagram, Facebook was a thing.
Gotcha.
Right. But nobody was really like targeting, like marketing really hard on social at the time so this was like a whole new like ball game approach of like, hey, how do we enter this market? How do we make enough noise that people can at least start to look and see what's going on, like take note of us at least. Right. So, and honestly, like we were talking about earlier, like I feel like there's a blueprint. I don't think anybody's really figured it out yet.
No.
I spent a lot of hours, thought long and hard about like, how to enter a market like this that's in the state that it's in, and be able to get some penetration and some recognition pretty quick, and there's a lot of factors that go into it, right? So but for us, we were a legacy at the time, and we started to build the brand out on the legacy side, and OCS did a product call, and everything they were asking for in the product call was exactly what we had to offer. So like we weren't ready to move yet. I was quite content where we were.
Yeah.
And I didn't have cultivation set up in the legal space yet. So I knew we're taking a risk because we're jumping over with our brand without our flower.
God, yeah.
And that scares the hell out of me. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah,
It's
I can imagine.
My whole life revolves around finding fire genetics and growing the best weed I can. And now I build this brand and I start to get recognition, and then I'm going to jump into another market and trust someone else's product, and it is stuff,
Yeah.
It's scary as all hell.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's like jumping off a cliff there. Like you're doing great. You're, without a brand, and then you're having to go legal. You're going to have to get licensed, get a corporate entity, and then figure out this branding thing all in a market that's fucking wacky. Yeah. So
it's a scary proposition, right? But I don't know. For us, it was kind of a no-brainer. It was like, hey, like we want to build this brand.
That was Lush, right? That's the Lush brand.
So that was the drip.
Okay.
So Lush, we had already launched into the retail market. I think we're almost 2 years now in the retail space.
Right.
So I had that experience too. That played a big role in like how I approached the launch of the drip.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like when you get to see end consumer behavior, you understand the processes of what it's like to be basically as a brand, as a producer. Like I have two customers. I have an end consumer customer, but then I also have a third party customer who's the retailer, right? So I have to be able to market and speak to both of those audiences.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Where if I was just growing and I never had the retail experience, my automatic assumption would just be like, oh, we just got to get the end consumer, when that's not really the case. Like I understand the importance now of building relationships with retailers, right? Because they're the ones that are educating the end consumer about who we are and what our product is, and if we don't have that piece in there, but we can speak to them. You know what I mean? And the end consumer piece is hard to touch.
And what's sort of the experiences or like takeaways from that? So you're in retail. What's a learning that you would take away? Like, because as a grower, you have to add value to the consumer and to the retailer. You know what I mean? Like, so what was one big takeaway you take away?
My biggest takeaways, I'd say the one biggest takeaway that I took from it, and it also happened at the same time as we were doing our e-commerce for the drip on the legacy side. Something fire would drop, right? And then the weed would stay fire, and sales would drop off over a few months, 6 months, whatever. So like, it was the hottest selling product. It was the best flower we had in store. It stayed the best flower, but sales numbers came down, right? And at the same time, we launched the Flavor Club on our e-commerce platform. So the premise behind the Flavor Club was because we do so much, we pheno hunt about 1,000 seeds a year. So we do so much pheno hunting that we wanted to share some of the work that we were doing, which it was hard before because it's like we only have 1 or 2 plants of something.
Right.
It's hard to like commercialize that, right? Yeah. So what we did was, okay, well, we'll just list all the phenos that we think are good. Like some will be amazing, some will end up be our end keepers, some will just be good. Anything that we don't think is good, we won't list. We'd list those. You can pick 4 flavors, 7 grams each, and that's an ounce. Your ounce for you. Yep. So we had a menu that we thought was our best flower, our keepers, and then we had a menu that was all these randoms, and you don't know what you're going to get. You can pick what you want, but you don't know how good it's going to be, right? And they're the same price. The random one outsold our regular menu 2-1.
Gotcha. So you're getting, so the takeaway is like customer behavior is very odd. It's unpredictable.
No, it's not that. It's that there's a big demand for new.
That's what I mean. Like you see like this pop. It's not necessarily quality. It's like this new innovation. It's something new. It's something different or whatever.
Everybody wants the new flavor, right? So like if you're a daily smoker, like most daily smokers are going to, lean towards trying a new flavor profile if they know it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to smoking the same thing. Even if the thing that they know is going to be good, is attainable and it's right there, or accessible and it's right there, you're still going to.
That's interesting.
But I mean, that's human nature, though.
I was just about to say that's nature, like it just speaks to human nature, not the weed game. It's just sort of like
like there's a certain amount of certainty and uncertainty that you want in your life, and everybody's different on what that ratio looks like.
Totally.
So it's like variety is nice, right? Especially if you're a daily smoker that smokes all the time, right? Most people that smoke all day every day don't really get high. Like when I used to be like a heavy consumer, like I'm not as much of a consumer now as I was before. But I was a heavy consumer, like it didn't matter what I smoked.
It was just the process.
I wasn't getting high. It was the process, and I want a good flavor.
Right, gotcha.
You know what I mean? Like I want something that tastes good. So if you're like, hey, I have this new one, it tastes like this, fuck, send it. Yeah, I want to try it. Like I know the other one I got last time was really good, and I liked it. But give me the new one.
Yeah. Even if it's shitty, like it's
I don't know, but I'm willing to gamble on taking the new one, right? So for us, our first release, the Flavor Club on OCS, is a rotative with that same premise as every 2 to 3 months, we're going to swap it. Right. Gotcha. So that, and as we swap it, we'll educate, our buyers as well as our end consumers what the new one is. Right. And as something gets, let's say, so we're going to release our frosted gas cake in the new year, which is a pretty special one. And that'll be our first batch that we release of our own personal flower. So for something like that, I'll run it for 3 months. Right. We'll leave it on the market for 3 months and then we'll take it away. Right. So as sales numbers slowly start to come down, we'll introduce something new. Right. But then 6 months or 9 months down the road, people say, hey, what about that frosted gas cake? Where's that at? I say, well, guess what?
Again.
It's dropping. You know what I mean? It's coming on this date. You know what I mean? And we're going to show you the cultivation process from start to finish all the way through. And then you're going to, have it at the end to consume.
So you've taken this experience in retail at Lush. You've seen customer behavior or human behavior as we deem it.
Yep.
You've then used that experience to develop you call it a blueprint, I think, of how to, cut through the noise, so to speak. And it's sort of embodied in the brand too, like the fact that it's mirroring the customer, so to speak. But that's pretty cool. I like that. The one thing we do in every episode we have to talk about is the legacy to legal transition. Can you share your experience transitioning from legacy to legal in terms of like what I mean? I know we talked about sort of the rough edges of it, but what was your sort of takeaway on it?
I mean, originally I was kind of scared of it. Right? Like the initial thought is like it's something that's like challenging and overwhelming, And then the more like I just looked into the process, the more I realized like, hey, like if we just build good partnerships and work with the right people, like it's not this big of an undertaking to transition a brand over. You just have to be willing to shut down what you're doing before with it
and take the leap.
That's essentially, you know what I mean? Like, but my initial assessment of it was like this is going to be really hard.
Yeah.
And then the more I looked, the more I was like, what, as long as you're willing to educate yourself a bit, it's not super difficult, right? But you also have to think too, like we didn't build Cultivation, we didn't go through a licensing process for cultivation, all that kind of stuff. You know, like all of our cultivation that you're going to see from us in market is going to be through partnerships, right? We consult, right? So we've got access to some really nice facilities that it's only beneficial for them and us that I say, hey, like, you know, we'll help you manage cultivation, right? And we'll also help you offload majority of the flower that comes. Like it's not a very hard sell, you know. Like,
no,
we'll grow you really good weed, and then we'll also buy it from you.
Right.
Like, okay, sick, you know, like
works for me.
Yeah, so that's the hurdle that I didn't have to overcome because I approached it
Smart.
from a different point of view. Like early on, I wanted to own cultivation. Now I want nothing to do with owning the assets that it requires to have cultivation. Like, I'm much happier to provide a service and like use the tools that are in front of me. You know what I mean? But to own cultivation right now to me is scary. And if I was going to do it, it would be because I got something at 10 cents on the dollar on a distressed asset and we executed on it. You know what I mean? But even then, to carry that process through and it's not
manage it.
Yeah, it's not it's significant,
it's
right?
It's very significant.
You know, where I can manage 10 cultivation facilities remotely without any of the headache of, you know what I mean? The human resource piece, right? You know what I mean? Like they've got their own staff, they've got their people they trust and that you know, come in and grind for them every day and go to bat for them, right? So
sounds like a smart approach. Did you see what was happening in the industry initially and you're like sort of observing it and learning kind of thing, and it sounds like you didn't go 2 feet in and you know, make a big fuck up catastrophe where you're like, oh shit.
Well,
it's kind of like a smart way to do it.
If we would have got into the market under Lush as a flower brand when I wanted to, then this conversation would be very different.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Because we were not ready then, and we wouldn't have made it. You know, it would have been a massive failure. We would have raised, you know, 5, 10, 15 million to put it together and would have lost it all. For sure, no doubt in my mind. Right? But now that I didn't have that happen and I've watched the market, you know what I mean, and decided to build a brand on the legacy side for a while, and it gave me time to kind of see what's happening, right? You know,
and to sort of like, again, like the slow observation and seeing things develop and, you know, learning through retail. It's a smart way to do it. It's commendable for sure.
Well, and you know what, but it's happened organically. Like, it wasn't like, hey, this is a good plan, let's follow it. It was kind of just like,
right.
You know, like we're at A, like how do we get to B? Okay, we're at B, how do we get to C? And just like the map kind of lined up well, that it was like along the way we learned. But it wasn't like this conscious like beforehand plan where like, oh, we're going to do X, Y, Z and get to the end result. Yeah. That's, I don't know. I've never been the most organized guy, so to like think that I would think through an entire plan like that and execute on it is, I'd be a little if I said I did, you know, like.
You mentioned raising money too. I feel like that might be a bad route for a lot of these operators. Like, I don't know what your sort of structure is, but did you raise money or are you just sort of like bootstrap, figuring it out and making the next rung?
Like, for us now, I mean, like what gave us the ability to move into the market like we did is the fact that you can do it that way, bootstrapping it. You know what I mean? Like, you need some capital. You're not going to walk in with nothing and build something, but like you don't need, you know, 7-8 figures to build something. You know what I mean? You got to be resourceful and you've got to be willing to work, right, and put the time in. And
listen to the signals coming back from you as you develop. You
can't go in bullheaded and just say, this is the way. Like, you have to go in with an open mind and see what the market's telling you. But that's the same thing with cultivation. So most growers are okay with that. Mm-hmm. You go in with an idea, right? But then the plants tell you otherwise.
It's sort of like you feel it out as you're going,
and you have to make the change and adjust, right? So
nice. There's you've expressed a lot of gratitude on your various pages, etc. How do you approach, not spirituality, but sort of like, what's your attitude that you bring to the business and the community in that sense? Like,
I mean, like, there was a time in my life, and I've spoken openly about this before, there's a time in my life where, like, you know, mental health wasn't great, you know? So, like, coming through, like, figuring out a way to, like, get through that part of my life, you know, and then come out the other side definitely gave me a different perspective to be, like, grateful for, you know, for every day and grateful for the ability to do all the things you can do in a day, you know? And it's like, so that kind of translates into kind of everything we do, right? Well, for me anyways, for my personal day-to-day, like, you know, for some people it's hard work. For some people it's like, sweet, I get to go and do X, Y, or Z, you know? And to me, like, You know, I'm essentially living my dream, right? I'm doing like exactly what I want to do. Like, even if this didn't pay me money, right? Which, to be honest with you, it doesn't yet.
Yeah.
It
We're all hoping one day.
You know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
but like, even like hypothetically, if it was like, hey, like you can just do this just because you enjoy it and you make $0,
Yeah.
I would still do it. I mean,
Like,
not,
you would
maybe
do it-
not to the time dedication that I do now, just because I'd have to find another way to generate revenue in my
Yeah.
life. But like, I would still do it with all my spare time.
Right. That's
so it's
crazy.
like, yeah, it's just like when I really think about it, like I said, I don't consume a ton, right? And so sometimes when I do consume like a lot, like intentionally, like I'll just go to the moon. Like I can guarantee you I get higher than most people can. Like way higher, you know? Like my tolerance is not very good, but like I have the advantage of I can get way higher than all my friends. You know, so it's like there's like one day, like a couple weeks ago, I just like smoked out all day, and I was just fucking blitzed, and I went in the flower room, and I'm just standing there looking, and I'm just like, wow, this is what I do for a living, bro.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you know, like this moment of like, what the fuck, you know?
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool. So I mean, it's hard not to be
Grateful
when
Totally.
you're doing something you love. But I mean, like, but I felt that way about life before I started doing what I loved. I mean, I was still doing something I enjoyed.
Yeah.
But like not really chasing my passion or like I am now, where
Yep.
before it was like just happy to like be healthy and like of sound mind to be able to, you know, interact and do all the things you get to. Most people take advantage or to just, you know,
Big time.
they don't think about, you know, what it means to be able to have like just like nice, happy, easy day. You know what I mean? Like
Totally.
take it for granted that
Always
it's
the
just
next
like,
thing.
Yeah, right. You know, it's like just look at the sky. Like there's trees that are growing right there. Eh?
Right.
They're feeding you oxygen.
And
You know, like,
that's how
what?
I actually got into
You know?
starting Kindling. Was like I had this experience where I went through a rough patch, quit drinking, and then took a capsule actually right after it legalized and went for a run, and I had that exact experience. Like I don't know about genetics. I'm very new, but had this moment where it was like running up Shaw, I think, and like I was like, it was just a moment of like, I don't know, gratitude, whatever. The sun shining through, the leaves are rustling. I was like totally present in the moment, in that one moment.
Yeah.
And it like hit me. I got the chills, and I was like, all right, everyone's got to fucking feel this. So I'm starting a business. Let's go.
Yeah,
And
that's
then-
that's
where
dope,
it was came.
bro.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
And so like, my thing with mental health and just health in general with cannabis, like wellness and lifestyle, is like that's how I got into it and was really passionate about it, like CBG and like sleep and this and function and all that. And it doesn't resonate in the market. Like it's not like I went all in on these sort of the content about it and like really educating, and no one fucking cares. Like it's just like high THC and like, you know, how much can I get for this much kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe you see it from a different way.
No, I agree with you. I think a lot of that is just the current state of the economy and like where we're at as a population right now. You know what I mean? Like it's like, what's the highest I can get, and here's how much money I have. Like there's always going to be that, but I think that market, like the market as a whole, and like that perspective is going to slowly change. That's actually funny. We had this conversation. I was talking with Frankie, who's our main like sales guy, my homie since we were kids, about it today. And I said, he was talking about we're just talking about like just like bars for this like little like freestyle thing, right? And it was something about THC, and I'm like, yo, like put in there that we don't care about THC. You know what I mean? Like don't say the number, just say we don't care about it.
Yeah.
You know? Like, because the way the line was like, has this much THC, and then I was like, yo, change it to like, we don't give a fuck about the THC,
right,
you know?
Right.
And I was like, you know what, dude? I'm like, if we can grow good enough flower that we can finally be the ones that can start to change like the narrative of like THC, you know, like everyone's talked about it, but I was like, I don't know if we'll be the ones to do it, but someone's going to be able to execute good enough that people trust the weed enough that they'll just follow you, and they'll go wherever you tell them to go in terms of what genetic is, you know, is the best right now.
Right.
And eventually that won't be based on the number on the bag or the jar. It'll be based on trust that like, you know, every time these guys drop something new, it's always fire.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm going to try it.
And so you're extending that thought from like brand building, where you think like being able to build the drip into a brand that's, you know, everyone's aware of, and they're aware of the fact that you have this philosophy, and you're piling in on that, so to speak, a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. it's like when I think of like us, like, the Drip as a brand and like what it stands for, to me, it's two things. One, it's, coming with exclusive new flavors, right? Stuff that no one's seen yet. And I know they haven't seen it because we made the genetic in-house. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Coming with something that legitimately nobody has seen. It's not a pheno hunt of like some other breeder's gear that like 100 people or 1,000 other people are growing and you just have your own cut of it. Like, we're talking something new that no one's seen. It's ours. No one can argue that like it's a cut from here or there. Like, we bred it. Here it is. Here's the flavor profile. Something new. Whatever that profile is, because all of our selections when we pheno hunt is based on flavor profile, right? So the very first run, all we do is just go through and look for like what is terpy and unique terp profile. And that's like the first criteria to get through that first round of testing.
Yep.
And then we start to narrow down which one's going to be commercially viable and that kind of
Do
stuff.
all that paperwork stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, like, really run the plant through a couple times in a good environment to get a good idea of where it's going to go, and then make a decision on what's to keep. So that's number one for us, is like flavor. And then the other piece for us is that, like I said, we want to work on building something that people trust for quality. So like new flavors, and people have faith in the product being consistent.
So it still comes back to the first days. Product speaks.
That's it. At the end of the day, people
Love it.
will complain about a market, complain about this, that, and the other.
Yes, they will.
At the end of the day, good weed will always sell.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, this market is as wacky as it is. Like, we have a market though.
Yeah. That's
And-
pretty
and-
cool.
and
Grateful for that,
There's
right?
a lot of money coming into that market. Like,
True.
it's not like consumer sales are low. Like,
Right.
like,
It's just figuring out how
out
it can
how
make
to-
for the most amount of people, basically.
Yes, but
So we had our friends, Disciplined Stoners, on. I've been on their podcast.
Cool.
Watched you on theirs, Disciplined Stoners, and you mentioned this story of getting popped with your mom. I got to hear this.
yeah. Okay. So I didn't really get into much detail. So yeah, it was like 3 days before Christmas. I was 18 at the time. I want to say we were 2001, maybe. Yeah, I think 2001, something like that. 2002. Yeah, I'm born in 84. 2002. So a few days before Christmas, and I had a friend of mine that had stayed with us for a while before. He came back and he's like, "Hey man, like, we need a place to crash, whatever. Like, can you help me?" So I mean, we're a friendly weed smoking family. Like, of course, bro, come in. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. Like, we got you. We'll take care of you. It's fine. But we were growing at the time, and I said, look, like, because when he was with us before, we weren't growing. So I said, look, like, we're growing, like, we're doing some things, like, I just can't have any issues around here, And
No
he's like,
bullshit, buddy.
No shit. Like, 'cause I knew he'd been in and out of trouble. So, and I gave him, like, straight up, like, this is what it is. Like, if you feel like that might be the scenario, like, let me know. Like, I'll drive you anywhere you want to go. I'll give you some money, like, whatever. Like, we'll make sure it's cool. But, like, I just can't have any issues, like, nothing. Oh, no, if I show up for my own reconnaissance, I'm on my own reconnaissance. If I show up for my court date, I'm good. I've never been in trouble. I don't fucking know what that means,
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, okay, cool, bro. Like,
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, like, I trust you, Like,
Yeah.
So then, like, a day later, fucking, they came to look for him, got him, right? And then, so, like, here's the kicker. So they come inside, and my mom had went and got him, and like, hey, like, you got to go, whatever, right? And I guess they came inside and they looked and kind of like seen some bongs and stuff like that. And so it's like again, pre-legalization, right? So it's just like, okay, now we have
That's a crack pipe.
Well,
At the
that's
time.
it. But now we have reasonable grounds for suspicion that we could do whatever we want now. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was the mentality at the time.
Yeah,
In
totally.
that early 2000s, right? So they questioned my mom. My mom's like, look, like, my kid's 18. Like, I'd rather him smoke weed in the house than fucking be out driving his car or party and do whatever. Like, I'd rather him smoke here in the safety of his home. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what it is, right? So I think the cop was going to be cool about it and was just going to leave. Well, then the guy that was staying decides that he wants to dip off the front porch and run because the cop didn't cuff him, right? So they didn't cuff him, so he decides he's going to run.
Fuck.
So now they're chasing him, calling for backup, right? Now they're pissed.
Yep.
So then obviously shit hit the fan. So I think there's a good possibility if you just would have like got in the car and went quietly, that probably would have been the end of it.
Yep.
But they came back like full force, like everything, K9 unit, like all the works, bro. Like I drove by my house and there's like all like the cube van looking things. I'm like, oh man, like I only have like 4 plants in there, and I already sold all the weed this morning, so we're good. Like, like there's not really that much going on in there, but like I mean, at the time, like growing weed was obviously like it's controlled substance. At the time, it was what's it called? It was an indictable offense at the time. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like a petty crime at the time. Production of a controlled substance.
I got arrested for smoking weed outside a theater. Like, and speaking of that probable cause shit, it was just like. And then they searched my car because they thought they smelled it in the car. It's like, what the fuck is happening? Like, come on.
Yeah. So that's how it went down. They came for him and they got me.
Oh my god. So how mad were you at him?
Really mad. I didn't. Yeah. I don't even know if I've ever actually talked to him face to face since.
Oh really?
Yeah. Like I don't think like some of my friends came across him at a party or something like many years later.
Ran again.
And things didn't go well as far as I was told. You know, I'm not about that. Like, whatever, it is what it is. Like, you know, I'm not happy about it, but I'm not much of one for revenge. It's kind of like, whatever. You know what I mean? You fuck me once, it's the only opportunity you're going to get.
Yep.
You know, like, I'm not coming back for whatever.
For more.
But, yeah, so, no, I haven't seen him again since. But, yeah, the boys did run into him afterwards. Well, here's the problem, though. And it wasn't even for me. It wasn't even for me. It's because the whole crew respected my mom. That was it.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Because my mom was cool, right? You know, so they had a lot of respect for her.
Right.
You know, so when they heard that went down and she was a part of it,
that was not
okay. You know, if it was just me, like whatever. You know, be like you got mom, eh?
You walk
like,
in, they're hanging out with them, like high five.
Dude, they were pissed, man. They were really mad about it. You know, I was mad about it too, but like, yeah, they
let it be known they were mad.
Yes. Yeah,
so your mom, speaking of, is still involved with the business a little bit?
Yeah.
Nice.
So she kind of helps a little bit with the greenhouse. So majority of our first like pheno hunt stuff, the first rounds are done in a greenhouse. We just got like an automated light dep on there and some automated irrigation, so it's super low input, low labor. We make some hash with the product, or we make a shit ton of seeds. One of the two is all we do with it. So I'm not that worried about the end result coming out of there. Yeah, but mom, that's at mom's spot. She kind of helps with, make sure reservoirs are full. And
I'm picturing like a mother hen sort of guru who knows everything and kind of like make sure the trains run on time a little bit.
Nah, she's more just she stays on top of us and make sure that, you know, we don't do anything stupid and we clean up after ourselves and make sure, you know, all the good stuff. But like, she's like, they got 8 or 9 dogs, bro. So it's like, she's a dog mom like through and through, you know. So it's like all her focus is like making sure all the pack is cool, right? She helps here and there where she can, and you know, and I appreciate it from her because she was the one that gave us the green light to do it, you know, when we were kids. You know, because she's just felt strongly like, you know, it's a plant, you know, and they don't have the right to take our freedom, you know,
definitely
to work with this plant and have it as a part of our lives. Like they don't have, no one has the right for that. I don't care what the laws say, no one has the right, you know. So like that was her opinion early on, and that kind of like built my like stance on it as well. Obviously when your mom feels that way, you know what I mean, as a kid, and you see it growing up, it's like, okay, like, you know, like I feel comfortable feeling that way too, you know, and
just rationally thinking about it, like it doesn't make sense, and if something doesn't make sense, you kind of push against it and question it, right?
But her like open mind to it and like her opinion on it is why I'm sitting here today.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Do you know what I mean? Like if it wasn't for like openness to like let me cultivate there at a young age, I would never got the passion for it, never got the bug.
Right.
I never would have chased the dream later. You know what I mean? It was because those early days she was cool with like, you know, within reason. It wasn't like we were like lighting the house up. You know what I mean? Like, you want to grow a couple plants in the closet, go ahead.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody. Cause
honestly, sounds like a great hobby for a child. Like, not a child, you know what I mean? Like, like growing a plant and fucking managing it. Like, it's pretty
like,
crazy.
Yeah. And then like understanding like if you put the work in and you like study and learn,
right?
You know what I mean? Like that,
That's
there's
cool.
you know, like, so like I said, like my early days of studying and really like trying to educate myself, the first thing I ever really learned was growing weed.
Right.
Because I wanted to learn enough that I was willing to spend the time to read the books and like get all the info I could.
Yeah.
And really put my mind to it. You know, like there's nothing else beforehand that excited me enough or got my attention enough that like could get me to focus like that. You know, that was the first thing where I was like, hey, like, this is it, man. Like,
that's what I mean about you guys, like the types, like where, you know, when you guys are unleashed on the it's just like this engineering and anyway.
Yeah,
that's great. I'm getting looks to shut up and end this, but I got a couple more questions I got to ask you about. So the rolling tray in the bag. Can you tell me about the thought behind that?
Yeah. We're like, I mean, as most people have realized, we're pretty big fans of the California market. Been kind of like a student of that market for a long time. So that's kind of like there is a couple companies out west that were doing it, and no one had done it up here yet. And I was like, well, I think it's a good idea. Personally, I like it. I like the idea that it's like we're kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit. You know what I mean?
Do you have any legal issues with it?
We didn't. We didn't. Like, obviously, our QA team was, you know, like advising us on like the possible outcomes, right? But you know, I was of the stance of like, hey, like we've been doing shit that we weren't supposed to do
since day one
for 20 years. Yeah. And that's why we're here in this market, is because there's enough people that were willing to do the shit that you told them they weren't supposed to do.
And the people that followed the rules exactly are all out of business, it seems. Like,
that's it, right? Like, you've got to, like, within reason, push the boundaries. So that was like the thing. I was like, I want like a protective tray because I don't want so much buds. Yeah. But I also like the idea of like having a dope little tray in there to roll on. I mean, I can't call it a rolling tray or I'll get in trouble, right? But
you can't call it a rolling tray?
I mean, we could, but we couldn't advertise as a rolling tray in there. Do you know what I mean? Now we're advertising an accessory, right? Which I can't do, right? So don't you guys use it as a rolling tray?
Yeah.
It's a bud protector, goddammit.
That's awesome. All right, I'll wrap up a little bit. I got a lot more questions. We could do a couple.
That's
more
okay.
Hours on this.
We'll circle back in 6 months
do
or
a
so
follow-up.
and see where we're at then, you know?
Yes, exactly. I want to know what's next for the drip. What's next for you?
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we're pushing hard to try to build the line. We submitted a bunch for the spring launch, so we're hoping to get approval on a handful of SKUs. Everything's flow through for us because we like the idea of controlling our inventory and like managing it and understanding how long something's been sitting in a small container for, like
storage method,
all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm hoping because we submit everything through flow through that we'll get a higher approval, you know, than normal, because we've been pretty stingy about giving out some SKUs before, you know, for us. So
you have been, or the OCS has been?
Yeah, we haven't. We've applied for a lot and haven't got them. So that's kind of like, for the brand side right now, that's what's coming. We want to do a few other 3.5s, like all rotative, same idea. So we want to have a candy line as well as a gas line. So we'll rotate different candy flavors, rotate different gas flavors, and then pre-rolls to match the flavor club. And then we tried to do 14 for the flavor club, and then we want to try to do a 7x7, so a 2x7 for a 14. Nice. So it'd be half gas, half candy. So we'll see if we get approved. It's
a lot of innovation.
Yeah,
I like
something
that.
A little different. Like, let's
totally.
try, right? Let's see, you know, like, and that all stems from like our like kind of understanding our like what we've learned on consumer behavior and people wanting to try new things on a fairly regular basis. Like, you know, our niche market are like the heavy daily smokers. They want to try something new. So, you know, let's try to keep stuff rotating all the time so that it's something new coming.
Love it.
Yep.
All right, folks. Josh, thanks for joining me. I
appreciate
it. Everyone visit shopkindling.ca to order all your The Drip needs. I appreciate you coming by.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.